This is Doug DeMuro, and today we're going to talk about the best cars that aren't sold in the United States. There is this feeling among enthusiasts that back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of cars weren't sold in the US and they were way cooler in Europe or Asia or whatever, the GTRs and AMGs and M's, but these days most cool cars are sold in America. In my opinion, that is not true. There are still an enormous number of awesome cars out there in the world that we don't get here in the US. And today, I'm going to go through the best ones that aren't sold here. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website now with free listings. You can list your car for free and auction it on Cars and Bids. And we've had some great sales recently, including this Lamborghini Gallardo Spider, which sold for almost $120,000, this Scion FRS with a 2JZ engine swap, which sold for more than $20,000, and this fantastic Porsche Cayman, which brought over $55,000. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the place to do it. Check it out. Great selection and daily auctions at carsandbids.com. Okay, let's talk best cars not sold in the United States. I was putting together this list. There were actually a lot, and I think I could have kept going and going, but I have like 8 or 10 great cars that should be sold in the United States that aren't. Okay, so I'm gonna do these alphabetically, except for at the end I have a couple of Chinese cars, which is controversial and interesting, but let's get started with the BMW M3 Touring. BMW will soon sell a station wagon version of its M3 in Europe. They have never done this before. BMW has never officially made a production version of an M3 wagon. They did a couple of test cars. At some point there was an E46 M3 Touring they made 1 or 2 of as like, maybe we'll do this, but then they never actually went into production. But that's changing this year, next year. They are coming out with an M3 wagon in Europe. This is incredibly annoying for me because BMW has sold the 3 Series wagon in the United States for years. Going back to the E46, which is like late 90s, 99, 2000, they've sold the 3 Series wagon, but they just canceled it for this latest version of the 3 Series. They're no longer offering the 3 Series wagon, and so now we don't get it in the States. And that means we also miss out on the M3 wagon. So this is really disappointing. I mean, this is a 480 or 510 horsepower station wagon, and for wagon enthusiasts like me, I've had 2 E63 wagons, I had a Cadillac CTS V wagon. I am so sad that this car is not going to be offered in the United States. I think it would be incredibly cool. And it's also disappointing to me because I think it would actually be somewhat popular. The Audi RS6 Avant has been really a hot seller, going for way over sticker. Everything is in this market, but that car has taken off. And obviously Mercedes has sold the AMG E-Class wagon in the US for a long time, and that's done pretty well, especially in recent years. It's kind of taken off more and more, and it's so disappointing that we're not going to get the M3 wagon in the States. Okay, moving on to the next cool car we don't get. This one, I don't know if everybody's going to agree with me that it's cool, but the Citroen Ami. This is an incredibly stupid little car. It's a little city car that has 2 seats and 8 horsepower. Yes, you heard that right, 8 horsepower. It is an electric car, and it only goes like 47 miles on a single charge, or 45 or something like that. It's not a real usable car, and it weighs right at 1,000 pounds. It's just really small and stupid. So it's kind of like a golf cart, but I think this would kind of be cool for mobility solutions in really busy, crowded cities. Cities on the East Coast, you know, New York, Boston, Washington, D.C., maybe even Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago. I think that this could be kind of a cool little get around town sort of thing. There's been a lot of discussion about, you know, cities densifying, people wanting to move into cities, transit. Cars like this could be part of that solution. They take up half a parking space, if even that. They're fully electric. You just kind of drive them around cities. You can park them, you know, in a small spot at the grocery store, whatever, and it could be like a decent sort of around town in your neighborhood type of city car. And I think that that actually would have a decent use case here in the United States. And mostly, I just think it's quirky and weird looking, and I would like to review it. Okay, next one. This one is very obvious for all car enthusiasts out there. Not sold in the United States, very cool. Ford Fiesta ST and Ford Focus ST. We got the prior versions of these cars, and they were popular, and Ford readily admits that they were popular. Unfortunately, the cars that these cars were based on weren't popular popular enough for Ford to continue offering them. So the Fiesta and the Focus, Ford has gotten rid of them here in the United States, and they've focused more on crossovers, SUVs, and pickup trucks. And to Ford's credit, they've done an amazing job with that focus, with some great crossovers and SUVs and pickup trucks. We got the Maverick, we got the Mach-E, we got the Raptors. I mean, everything is going great in that world for Ford, but it is sad to lose these cars, and especially the performance versions. These are still being offered in Europe. Obviously, the newest version of the Fiesta and Focus are still available there. A Focus RS will surely be coming back out soon. And it's just a shame not to get them here. The Fiesta ST, I think the new one looks better. The tech is improved. Horsepower is the same, but torque is up. The Focus ST is at 276 horsepower now, which would have been really cool with the same great 2.3 EcoBoost, one of my favorite powertrains. And it's just disappointing that we can't have those cars. Okay, next up, going back to the vein of fast wagons, the Mercedes-AMG C63 wagon. That car is offered for sale in Europe. It has been for a long time, and it has never been sold here in the United States. And actually, in the same vein, the Audi RS4 Avant, frankly, too. All of these kind of fast wagons. I mentioned the M3 Touring earlier, but it's just a shame that we don't get these cars, especially because I think Americans, and particularly car enthusiasts, are starting to gravitate more and more towards hatchbacks and wagons. Like I said, you see that proof with the RS6, with the E63, but also look at the Golf R, look at the Veloster N, look at the Toyota GR Corolla. There's a lot of different performance hatchbacks, wagons that are on the market, and frankly, they're all pretty popular. And it's just such a shame to me, because I would get a C63 wagon in 2 seconds brand new. I would love one, that it's not available here. And I also think it's a miss that Audi doesn't sell the RS4 Avant here. They give us the RS5 Sportback instead, which is a cool car, and I think it's very nice, but the wagon would be cooler. The styling's a little bit more restrained. It's obviously a little bit more practical, and I think it's just a shame generally that Audi has kept the RS4 from us for so long when the M3 and the C63 have done so well. But those two cars, really a shame, not sold in the United States. I just want more fast wagons. Okay, next up, here's another car that absolutely, obviously, incredibly should be sold in the United States, and that would be the Nissan XTERRA. So if you live in the United States and you know off-roader SUVs, you know that the Nissan XTERRA was made from like the late 90s through 2015, and then it was canceled. Nissan isn't going to make it anymore, they're done. And of course, they canceled this vehicle like 2 seconds before the rise of the off-roader SUV. The 4Runner took off, the Raptor took off, the G-Wagon, all the new I mean, everything. So many off-roady SUVs and vehicles have taken off since the XTERRA was killed. And so that seemed like a stupid missed opportunity, and everybody thought, oh, Nissan, you're idiotic for canceling this car, and it was kind of laughable. Well, here's the crazy thing. Nissan still sells the XTERRA. It's just sold not in the United States. It's sold in Asia, and it's called the Nissan Terra, and it's sort of a Toyota 4Runner type vehicle. It's kind of a body-on-frame, rugged off-roader, but they don't sell it in America, where body-on-frame, rugged off-roaders are so popular right now. Nissan says it'd be too hard to homologate, too hard to bring to the United States. They are insane. The Toyota 4Runner is selling and selling and selling above sticker without any difficulty, and Nissan's just sitting on the sidelines even though they make the vehicle. It's so stupid. And I really think that this is probably the biggest missed opportunity in the car industry today, is that Nissan isn't selling the Terra here in the United States with some kind of off-road kit. I think it would be a huge seller, 90, 100, 150,000 sales a year, depending on where they priced it and how they marketed it. And they're just leaving it on the sidelines because that's what Nissan does. Okay, next up, another car that would be very cool but isn't sold here, the Subaru LEVORG, which is the worst car name in the world. But what this essentially is a WRX wagon. And I know this list is a little bit wagon heavy, but in this case especially, I really think that they should be selling this car in the US. So for those who don't know, there has been a WRX wagon for a long time. Throughout the 1990s, Subaru made a WRX wagon in Japan. And then they brought it to the States in 2002, and there was a wagon version of the WRX in the first 2 generations, I guess 02 through 07, and then the next gen 08 through 14-ish, and then they stopped. There hasn't been a WRX wagon since then. Which I think is odd, because all of the competitors to the WRX are offered as a hatchback, and some are only offered as a hatchback, and like the Golf R and the GTI, and yet the WRX is only offered as a sedan, which seems kind of like a strange missed opportunity. But then you find out that they actually produce the wagon version. They sell it in Japan as the LEVORG, but in Australia it is sold as the WRX sports wagon, and it's offered as essentially a wagon alternative to the WRX. And I I think that this would do well. We see on Cars and Bids, WRX and STI wagons, the second gen version especially, sell for huge money. People are paying for these things even though they're 10, 12 years old at this point with miles on them. And these Subarus sitting on the sidelines not doing this. And I think Subaru's approach to the latest WRX has generally been a little bit weird. They've reserved some particular features just for the automatic version. They're not doing an STI, they say, which I find to be insane. They're losing interest in the WRX, and I think that that's proven by the fact that they're not interested in offering this wagon version. But I think it would do well, and I think if Subaru really did want to capitalize a little bit more on the WRX situation, they could bring this here and sell it. I think Subaru's issue is they're trying to move more mainstream. They want crossovers, they want 3-row, Subaru Ascent, they want Outbacks, Crosstracks, and I think WRX is just not really a focus for them anymore, but I think this car would do well if they wanted to. Okay, next up, another car I think would do well here in the States. Suzuki Jimny. This is such a disappointment for me. The Jimny is Suzuki's tiny little crossover SUV. It's body on frame, blocky, kind of capable SUV that they sell in global markets. They even sell it in Mexico, and in fact I reviewed one from Mexico in the bright tennis ball green color, and it was very cool. They don't sell it in the States because Suzuki pulled out of the US market like 5 or 6 years ago. And it's such a shame because we got previous versions of this car back when it was called the Samurai and sold as the Jimny in other markets. Sort of earlier models were sold here in the US. And I just terrified to think that if Suzuki did still exist here, they would be selling the Jimny in the States, but they don't. And I think this car is really cool, and it fills a niche that really doesn't exist right now in the States, which is an affordable off-roader. This is like a compact, this would probably be $18,000, $19,000 if it went on sale in the States, and it's a cool little off-road vehicle, and frankly, kind of a cool city car. I think something that's overlooked in the Jimny is how good it is. It's tight, small, you can park it anywhere, and it's great over potholes and bumps and curves like you might encounter in New York City or DC or San Francisco. And so I think it actually has some dual purposes, and I think it would do well, but Suzuki doesn't sell it here. They never bothered to homologate it in the States because they don't offer cars in the States. So no Jimny, which I think is a shame. Okay, next up, cars that I wish were offered in the United States. Toyota GR Yaris. I'm gonna say something controversial here. I think the GR Corolla is really cool, and I love that they're gonna make it, and I think it's awesome in a lot of ways, but if you look at the numbers on paper, it's not insane. Like, it's an all-wheel drive hot hatchback that has less power than the Focus RS did 5 years ago. Like, it's a cool car, but it's not crazy. And I'm happy they're selling it here, but the GR Yaris is crazy. Like, it's a Yaris, which is the stupidest car in the world. And it's got these massive fender flares and this massive boost in power, and most importantly, it's a homologation car. They only made this car so they could go rallying. In the rest of the world, the Yaris is only sold as a 4-door, but they made a 2-door Yaris just for homologation purposes and created this high-performance car. And I think that story is gonna make the GR Yaris kind of an iconic car over time. Homologation cars were common in the 80s, but they don't really exist anymore. But the GR Yaris is that, and I just think it's like the coolest thing in the world as a result. And I know I shouldn't be complaining because we're getting a larger version of that car, more practical but more powerful in the GR Corolla. But to me, the GR Yaris is the more special of the two. And I think long-term, the market will see it that way. And I'm sad that we couldn't have that car instead of the GR Corolla or in addition to the GR Corolla, because it's just such a ridiculous vehicle. Okay, next up on my list of cars that should be sold in the United States, Volkswagen California. So check this out. The Eurovan was Volkswagen's van in the United States throughout the 90s, and then it ended production in 2002, and they were gone. But Volkswagen didn't stop building big vans in 2002. They just stopped selling them in the United States. And currently, Volkswagen makes a big van called the California, and they sell it in Europe. Now, they also have a version called the Transporter. That's the cargo version, but the passenger model is the California, and it seems to be pretty appealing. It's, you know, a decently large van that's probably pretty practical and pretty useful, and it's available overseas. Now, I'm not a big, like, yeah, we need vans, van life, like some people are, but I'm not an idiot either, and I see the market. We have vans coming in by the truckloads, and it's the hottest thing in the world right now. Vans are everything in the market right now. And Volkswagen, who was the leader in vans throughout the 60s and 70s with the bus, and then the 80s with the van again, and then the Eurovan, they're not here to reap the benefits of this market that they kind of created back in the 60s. And I think it's such a shame that the Volkswagen van isn't sold here. They even make like a sprinterized camper version of this car in Europe called the Grand California, which really is like these campers that people are buying by the truckload and spending crazy money on. The Sprinter is the Volkswagen bus of the modern era, and it's such a shame that Volkswagen isn't here to be a part of that. But they're not, and they could be. And obviously the next generation bus will be called the ID Buzz, and it will be coming back as an electric vehicle, and I think it'll be cool and it'll be successful. But I think Volkswagen has missed out on 10 years of opportunity by not selling vans in the States when vans are probably at their all-time popularity peak. Okay, I also want to cover two other cars that I think should be sold in the United States, and that would be two Chinese cars. Now, this is kind of controversial. Americans generally are not paying attention to Chinese cars, but I follow all these Chinese car Instagrams, and there's some amazingly cool stuff that's being sold in China right now that Americans have no idea exists. Now, it's generally not performance cars, because that's not really what the Chinese market is about. It's generally like passenger vehicles and people movers, that kind of thing. But there are some cool cars, and these cars will never make it to the United States because the market in China is so large that you no longer need to sell in the States to be a profitable automaker. You can just sell to China or Asia and do just fine, and that's what these brands are doing. And so there's some special, cool, exciting cars in Asia that Americans will never see, have never seen, and aren't paying attention to. So the two that I find to be the most appealing right now, and there are probably many more that I don't know about. Number one is the VOYAH Dreamer. This is a luxury minivan, and when I say luxury, I mean like Maybach style luxury from a minivan. This is a plug-in hybrid vehicle, and it may sound weird that I'm saying I wish we had this Chinese minivan, but it's really attractive inside and out. You can see it's beautiful, screens everywhere, it looks great. You know, in the States we have a few of these EV startup brands like Tesla and Rivian and Lucid obviously, and a few others. In China, they have these too, and VOYAH is one of them, and the VOYAH Dreamer is very cool. I think that that would be a full luxury minivan, well-appointed, screens everywhere. I think would be a cool vehicle to see here. The other cool Chinese car that I wish we got in the United States, this one is more absurd, is the Great Wall Tank 300. That's this, and it's basically a knockoff version of the Mercedes G-Wagon. Although, unlike some Chinese cars that are really just straight copies of Western world cars, the Tank 300 is a little bit, it's meant to be kind of a cheeky takeoff, sort of like the Jimny is, honestly. And so it's not really a G-Wagon, it's sort of like a decontented, but it's like a cheap baby off-roader that you can just kind of screw around with, and it's so cool. And if you go on Instagram, you can find videos of Tank 300s like climbing stuff and doing things. So this has 3 differential lockers, it has low range, and it has a 227 horsepower turbo 4-cylinder, and it's boxy and it's cool. And I think that this would have sort of a similar purpose to the Jimny, like an entry-level off-roader SUV, and I think we could use that in the States. And frankly, I just think it looks cool. It would be neat to see. But there you go. Those are my take on cars that aren't sold in the United States right now that I wish they were. I want to stress again, and there's more that I could put on this list. I want to stress again, America has always kind of gotten screwed in some capacity or another by some automakers in terms of cool cars, and that certainly is true now. As well. There certainly are some special cars that aren't sold here, usually because US regulations are pretty punishing for automakers, and it's difficult to get everything through the US market. And it doesn't always make a business case to do that because sometimes it's just so expensive to get the car certified here that it's not worth it. But I wish that these cars were. I think they would all be good sellers, and the US market still misses out. We still have some cars to look forward to in 25 years when they're legal.